Hey, pals, if you're watching this and you enjoy it, click like and comment. It really helps out with the algorithm. Thank you.
If you want to consider a genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people, they have genocide built into Sharia law right now. So no, I'm not going to cry a river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a They're terrible people. It's not even a question. It's crazy that people don't see it that way. They'd be doing the same thing. And how much did they kill? As many as they can. They're not able to kill as many people as Israel because they don't have as many bombs and as many weapons. But if they did, they'd be doing the same thing. That's it. Just takes enough. That's right. These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways.
I am curious about this debate. Let's tune in.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the disagreements that I have with either their tactics or even the way that they would potentially govern themselves. Because I think it bears no basis in the grander scheme of things.
I do criticize the tactics, especially that was the
Delta.
October
What's up, buddy?
7th
Tim,
thing.
what's up?
A lot of random civilians
Chicklet
and
on
people
YouTube.
that
What's up,
weren't
buddy?
involved were getting killed. It's evil when they do it, and it's evil when Israel does it.
Yeah. But again,
I think that was a terrible
okay. That's
thing.
You made a great statement. I have also condemned the death and destruction of civilians. But listen. Going back to the Nat Turner Rebellion, or the Haitian Revolution, or the Algerian Revolution, or the struggle against the apartheid in South Africa.
I'm just gonna say it. You know, when Nat Turner's Rebellion, when they killed like babies, I'm gonna say that was bad. I know. Very brave. It's a very brave stance. I'm going to say that was bad.
In apartheid South.
I'm going to say that wasn't justified.
You think about how gross and inhumane the practice of the maintenance of the apartheid was, because if you spent a whole lot of time on what the tactics of the liberation were, it would almost come across as a justification, right? And that's my point.
I don't. Okay. So you think and I could see where somebody would think that. Sure, I could see where somebody would come from that perspective.
Duke, what's up, buddy?
I don't really think that it's justified at all. I don't think that we should be with them. I don't think we should be funding Israel. I think it's disgusting. It's a waste of everybody's money. Like you were talking about universal health care earlier. I think it'd be a lot easier for us to do that if we weren't shipping a bunch of bombs and resources.
Nope, not really.
To kill random people. I totally agree with you.
Nope, not true.
I very much think that it's wishful.
What was the estimate for Medicare for all? How much it would cost over 10 years? Was it? I don't know how much money it was. It's less than what we pay now with all the administrative costs and bureaucracy of having to go through insurance and middlemen and whatnot. But let me look it up.
No longer exists in any capacity.
Well, religious theocracy has never existed in Palestine regardless. They've never had a form of governance, let alone a religious theocracy, especially because
do you think they're not making decisions based off of religion over there?
Yeah, there is no religious theocracy at all. They're not like following the rule of Islam or anything like that, or whatever your understanding of a religious theocracy is. No, there are religious fundamentalists within the governance structure.
Wait,
once
what?
Again, it bears no. It's not a part of the decision-making structure.
So where do you think they got
the significant aspect of their? It's not a significant aspect of their day-to-day existence.
Islam?
Where do they got the idea to kill gay people then, or to put them in jail? Where did that idea come from? If it wasn't from religion.
What do you mean?
Well, where would it have come from?
It is ultimately irrelevant in the grand scheme of things because they are still under a permanent occupation. That's my point.
I don't understand why it's irrelevant.
My point is that it came from a religion.
Okay, religious theocracy is it's conservatism that you're criticizing, not specifically religious theocracy would be the final stage of conservatism in general. But what you're not recognizing in this process is that Palestinian civil governance, in terms of their mistreatment of gay people or anything like that, is totally and utterly irrelevant, especially when the only thing that we are doing in terms of our intervention there is to literally galvanize people with some more fundamentalist, some more reactionary perspectives by killing every single person.
True.
So if
I
your
completely
goal,
agree.
if your goal is
Midlife,
to,
Maddie, thanks so much,
if
buddy.
your goal is to allow, if your goal is to I guess abolish homophobia, destroy it, destroy queerphobia in general, you can't keep bombing these places. You need to allow these societies to redevelop, and then civil liberation will come. Just like in the United States of America, some form of that has existed, some form of that occurred because a lot of gay people and their allies fought long and hard.
So Wikipedia says since Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007, some of its members have attempted to impose Islamic dress or hijab head covering on women. The government's Islamic Endowment Ministry has deployed Virtue Committee members to warn citizens of the dangers of immodest dress, card playing, and dating. There are no government laws imposing dress or other moral standards. And the Hamas Education Ministry reversed one effort to impose Islamic dress on students. There has also been successful resistance to attempts by local Hamas officials to impose Islamic dress on women. Hamas officials deny having any plans to impose Islamic law. One legislator stating that what you are seeing is incidents, not policy, and that Islamic law is the desired standard, but we believe in persuasion. In 2013, UNRWA canceled its annual marathon in Gaza after Hamas prohibited women from participating in the race.
And be like, well, they're inferior in terms of their culture, so they kind of, you can make up your mind on whether they deserve it or not. But I don't remember the exact quote you said, but like I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of like, they're gonna get wiped out, and because they're inferior, that's fine. So if you
Pondy Samo, what's up, buddy?
Your fellow American citizens as human beings, the Palestinians are no different in that regard.
I think it's definitely different if you're talking about people that are from your country or not. Absolutely, it's different.
Wait, why?
Well, because they're part of your country, they're part of your culture.
Lala,
you're
what's up?
accountable to them in a completely different way. Like, of course, I'm going to feel more accountability and I'm going to care more about somebody who lives in my country than somebody that's across the world. Of course, I would think that. It's not even a question.
No, they're not. Wait. But the underlying fundamentals here is that
He said,
human
those
beings
Twitch
with
losers.
dreams
Sure.
Chat, Twitch, I still see you, buddy.
different opinions, or maybe even the same opinions and same exhibiting the same stages
listen
of
to
life
YouTube
that
chat.
you're exhibiting.
They don't know
And
anything.
therefore, all life must be cherished, and their lives should be no different in your analysis. If we're looking at like right and wrong, their lives are no different.
True.
Even if they disagree fundamentally with you culturally, they don't deserve to be bombed.
No. I don't want to have them bombed. Like, that's why I don't want to support Israel. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't want to support this.
Okay,
I don't
but
want to have
Israel is
anything to
still
do with it.
bombing them. And,
Sure.
and
Paulie and
when
Matt Rod, thank you so much, guys.
when you say one culture is inferior in the process of them being wiped out, saying that you're okay with them being wiped
YouTube, I do have memberships turned on if you wanted to. Hey, listen, if you want to see some more streams, might not be a terrible idea. I'm just saying.
I
There
don't
you
want to involve. I don't want to involve and entangle the country in another issue like that. I don't want to be involved with it one way or another. And no, I don't think that if they stopped getting bombed, they
Ben
would
Brody's
just
a member.
start
Look at him.
being
He's got that
accepting
fancy
of these other
badge.
people with these different
Well,
identities.
you don't know because we've never experienced that.
Because
Right,
there's
Dogger,
other
yeah, I did see
countries
that.
that are part of that same region
Wait.
that have the same laws, like Saudi Arabia or
But they're
Qatar.
not the same people. You do understand that, right? Like even culturally speaking.
They're coming from the same culture and they're coming from the same religion.
No, that Asmongold.
Do you really think?
How
do
come
you,
he's
I
got
don't
the
know how to
pepper?
describe this to you. Well, one, because
Okay,
you're talking to
okay.
someone who
want
is from
white
that culture and
beard
from
hair,
that
you know?
region, who is like of a Muslim background, comes from a 98% Muslim country. So, and you know what my opinion is in general. You know what my worldview is. So I think you understand
I
that
don't see
there's
that
a
doesn't-
genuine
that's what
diversity of thought there. Monolithizing an entire region of people is literally just.
You're allowed that diversity of thought because you're not there.
No, that's
keeping
not true.
on.
There
I
are
just
plenty
know.
of
I
Turkish
just
people who
a
fight
bunch of
back
people on
against the
YouTube
Turkish
asked me to
government
stream on
currently, and
Twitch,
Turkey
so
was
or on YouTube.
significantly more
So
secular
That's what I did.
You know, many years ago, before the Erdogan regime came through and utilized religion as a bastardized version of religion as a way to invoke social repression. Turkey is still far more modernized and far more tolerant than some of these counterparts that you're talking about.
Trevor.
But ultimately,
what's up, buddy?
there is no like singular attitude that every single person from this region has.
Emotes on YouTube
Just like
as
there
well?
is no singular attitude in the United States of America. That's why I gave you the example of like Christian fundamentalists living in a white enclave in Alabama.
Have you seen Asmongold's room office yet? Of course, yeah.
Versus fundamentalists that exist in the region. They are not like there is no unified monolithic understanding within the Muslim world. That is not the case at all. And there have been plenty of initiatives to fight against social repression in these countries.
How many countries are ruled by Islamic law?
It is virtually impossible to successfully implement these sorts of strategies when you're too busy worrying about like if America is going to bomb you or not. That's the point. Or if America
do you think
props up.
Dubai is worried about America bombing them?
Who? Dubai?
Yeah.
No, that Dubai is the other side of Dubai is the other side of the equation. That's the point. It's either you're worried about America bombing you, so you can't even engage in any sort of like initiative to fight back against.
I guess the map looks like this.
To fight back against your own government, or the American government
These
is
countries
offering
practice
you
it to
so
one
much
degree or another.
security in terms of like the military that there a violent repression
thank you so much for the gifted
is all
membership,
but
buddy.
inevitable if
Eden
you
Fire.
try to push
72
back.
months, thank you.
The point, however, is that do you think that there are no homosexual people living in Dubai? Of course there are. It's more so that they are repressed and are unable to fight back because America has propped up these monarchs and giving them a ton of weapons to be able to continue dominating their own citizens.
America bad. Yes, there it is.
That you blame too much of all of this on America.
Yep, there it is.
I think that America does play a role in this.
Forget America. It doesn't matter. America is a catch-all term here. Like it's whoever is like offering religious fundamentalists an opportunity to continue dominating their own population. If it wasn't America, it'd be a different country if they were doing the same thing. It just happens to be that it is America right now because it is the global hegemonic superpower.
Sure. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I think that the big problem is that if you have a religion and you are basing your culture off of that religion.
Asmongold's like, I think you're blaming America too much. And he goes, well, let's just take away America. It's America because it's a hegemon. What? You have not addressed the substance, sir.
Whether anything.
You're blaming like brutal repression of homosexuals on America.
This current point, the way that they handle things.
Ignatus, what's up, buddy? Thank you.
It is
there is no, but also again, we have to both recognize that like Palestinians are not handling anything but just a genocide right now. So there is no
completely right.
Okay, so when you recognize that, and you talk about the barbaric nature or the immoral nature of like Palestinian existence without analyzing it within the framework of 76
I never
years
said that it was barbaric or their existence. I said that their behavior and the way that they treat people is bad. It's extremely bad. And it's inferior to ours.
It's not a real thing at all. No, because it's not. You said they were inferior.
I did.
It is completely outside of the scope of Palestinians when they do not have any sort of sovereignty. I think you did use the term barbaric, if I'm not mistaken. But once again,
the behavior.
Not that it's a justification for the level of bombing that Palestinians have been subjected to in the last year. Obviously, I think probably most reasonable people would agree with that.
Sort of group of people as an entity does have this viewpoint. But
Gazans do have some level of sovereignty in terms of who they elect, and they decided to elect Hamas. Again, that's not a justification for everything that we've seen, but Hamas has broad support, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank, and they have some pretty backwards views, you know?
Or America is incomprehensible from the perspective of Americans, so I have to use like an alien force with superior technology in this situation. If we were getting ruthlessly slaughtered by an alien force, I wouldn't give a if someone was homophobic or not. I'd be like, thank you for fighting against the alien force. That seems awesome that you're doing that. I would actually arm up side by side with my fellow homophobic Republican, rabid Christian fundamentalist sociopaths to try and protect my home. And that's the.
But you won't team up with Democrats to like make sure that Trump loses in 2024. Has he come out and said who he's voting for? Isn't this crazy? Like, well, you know, like, yeah, I would team up with a bunch of homophobes if it meant like, you know, beating back the apartheid state, the Israeli apartheid state. But he hedges on like joining a coalition with Democrats to make sure that Trump can't win. Explain that to me.
Engage in regular
Holy
foreign
thug, what's up, buddy?
trade. And Israel dominates their life to such a degree that like they literally used to deny cookies from entering the Gaza Strip or pasta from entering the Gaza Strip, a practice that the Israeli Kojat authorities considered putting the Palestinians on a diet. That level of ruthless domination over the course of 76 years is probably going to harden you against the group that is dominating you, is probably going to make you hate the group that is dominating you.
Now, I think that's
right
fair.
and correct to hate them.
I think
You're
that's
not being
fair.
dominated by gay people. You're not being dominated by transsexual people. Like, I totally agree that, yes, of course, like, it makes sense
gay people and trans people,
Palestinians-
gay people and trans people are not a part of what I'm saying. I'm saying that the gay people and the trans people that are living under those conditions in Gaza, right, see Israel as a far larger problem in their existence than they do, like, Islamic fundamentalism in terms of governance.
I'm not sure how you could confidently say that. How does he know? I mean, like, look, yeah, like, how does he know? How does he know that? You know, it feels like he's making a pretty big assumption there, right?
Yeah,
all
sure.
the time. I talk to gay people in Lebanon. They have a similar opinion. It's not like Hezbollah is a fan of gay people in Lebanon.
I've heard about that. Yes.
Yeah, and yet they also view Israel as a far larger, far more violent, far more consequential force.
I talked to a couple gay
than
people
they
in
do
Lebanon, and
Hezbollah.
so therefore I
Now,
have
there
the
are
authority to
naysayers.
make
You will
like
find
these
some people who are like, "Oh, I'm so glad that
vast
Israel's bombing
generalizations.
Lebanon." As a Lebanese person, certainly,
He might be right,
but that
I don't know
is
about his
the
methodology
reality that
here.
unfolds time and time again. And there are a million historical examples and a million contemporary examples I can point to when a much larger sovereign nation comes in and blows up your house. All of a sudden, you're not thinking about sucking dick, okay? You're just not. You're not thinking about getting gender confirmation surgery or being able to.
What?
My God, my house exploded. What the do I do? You're thinking I have to run. And you're feeling grateful for people who are fighting back. That's just it. And that's the existence for Palestinian people. It's not necessarily that they're like monolithically barbaric or immoral or inferior to Western culture. It's just that they're busy being like, I want cookies sometimes. And that would be nice if I could get it. And that's on a good day, by the way.
If Israel didn't exist tomorrow, would brutal repression of homosexuals or transgender people, would that just disappear from the Middle East? Probably not, I would assume, right?
Well, who says Israel's good? Israel, like, I don't think anybody thinks Israel is good.
But
I'm just saying
Well,
that, like,
a lot of
that
people think
culture,
Israel's good,
and,
just to be
like,
clear.
again,
it's
if
not
you go back
that
to it,
culture is my point.
Bonnie,
You
what's
can't
up?
monolithize an entire group of people, Asmon. That's the point.
No, you can't. But what you can say is that the people that are controlling it, like you said with Hezbollah, these people are not fans of this. And I'm not going to try to be guilt-tripped into picking the lesser of two evils. And I don't think that after this conflict is over, if it ever ends, I don't think that they're going to magically get together and just let gay people do what they want.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay, but
think that's what's going to happen.
you're imagining a world without any sort of evidence by pointing to other countries in the region that are literally directly.
Well, is Hasan making the affirmative case that if Israel were to just disappear tomorrow, that these oppressive laws would just go away? Is he taking that position?
By pointing to them and saying, well, this is just the nature of this people. And that is not the case. And that is my point.
Oh, it's not the nature of the people. It's a culture. It's an ideology.
It would be like saying, sorry, America is an inferior culture circa 2013, or America is still an inferior culture when Trump in.
I don't know. I get a little like wish-washy. I'm hesitant to say that like any culture is inferior, just because I feel like you're walking into a bit of a snake pit there. But like, for example, like I would consider the Westboro Baptist Church, like I would call that inferior. You know what I mean?
And is now moving America in the wrong direction.
Not motivated by racial
I understand
prejudice.
that for your fellow citizens.
I would say that. I would say that it would become inferior. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that if you compare our culture that we have now to 20 years ago, we are superior than we were 20 years ago. And I think that if you look at 40 years ago, it's even more the case. And I think it continues to become
absolutely
more.
right
That's
here.
great. Okay. So my point, however, is that now add on to that equation a military force that is so much more powerful that like there is no global current existing counter. Like I can't say this about China. Like the difference in military might between China and America is that America is still far greater in terms of military superpower than China is. There is no comparison between the disproportionality of the violence that Palestinian people face from Israel and America.
Get you for 75, 37 months.
Like suits the bill of like Americans potentially being dominated and destroyed. If Donald Trump was, which is the reason why I use the hypothetical example of an alien force with like mega nukes or something that can just like wipe out entire cities overnight, just to help you understand the proportionality of this violence that Palestinians are subjected to. If Donald Trump tomorrow came into,
when I wear a shirt as tight as Hasan's, I look like I'm literally pregnant. No joke. If I stand up right now, you would ask me like, how far along are you?
everyone else would try our very best to.
People are starting to comment now, which is nice. I went to my meeting on Monday, and one of the guys that went to my meeting was like, "Oh, slow down there. You look like you're pregnant." And then some random guy in DC, when I was there for the Call of Duty thing, some random guy drove by and was like, "Your stomach is too big." Like, what the? And I didn't understand him at first. I was like, "Wait, what? What'd you say?" And he goes, "Your stomach is too big." And then he just drove away. I was like, "What the hell, man?"
Or whatever the people said at the time, some of which was true and some of which was not. Did not.
It's all very new to me. You know, I grew up very tall, very slender. Like, I was usually the skinniest person in the room in whatever room I went. And that includes a room of like hundreds of people. So this is very new to me. Okay.
Right. I'm not justifying. I don't think anybody would justify.
I know, but I think that when you say that they're an inferior culture and I won't defend them, understandably people think, oh, okay, so you don't have an issue with the way things are unfolding currently.
I mean, I think that people are going.
I do think Asmongold was a little out of pocket, just being like, I don't care if they get genocided. I mean, I feel like he was trying to be a little bit edgy there, but not the best thing to say, I would say.
That people make that would make that assumption about your statements when there's an ongoing genocide that you consider to be, inappropriate.
Okay, a lot out of pocket. Okay, fine.
Yeah, no, I think that it's bad. For sure. Of course it's bad.
Okay.
People are going to look at that. They're going to look at what I say, and they're going to make their decision off of that for whatever reason, right? I have no idea. One thing that I've learned on the internet is that it doesn't matter what you say. Most people have already decided if you're right or wrong before they watch the clip. That's really the truth. So I'm not really that concerned about that.
He's probably right about that.
Of course, I don't support killing random people, right? Nobody supports killing random people. But if you're talking about supporting a country and supporting a government or like a group that is in power, I would.
You don't have to answer, but do you think meds are a factor? My bro is on a lot of the same you have mentioned, and he has to go to the gym at least 4 days a week. It is for sure. So yeah, I take Seroquel, and Seroquel gives you the munchies. It's like it gives you the munchies bad. You know, you take it at 9:30. And then by the time it's like 10:30, you're ready to go to bed, but there's a part of you that's just screaming, go downstairs and eat like a half a tub of ice cream. And it happens every night.
I really hope that we can end the genocide. The Palestinians will be able to make their own decisions, and we'll see which one of us is right about this.
Okay.
I do. That's my perspective.
Okay.
Because I don't think I can convince you And I don't think you can really convince me about this, but I think that we do agree.
We're at an
saying that
impasse.
doesn't
Doing this
matter.
is-
To me, it doesn't matter
go
because
ahead.
it's not because I don't care about
Yeah.
queer liberation. Of course I do. But I understand, as do you, by the way, that genocide is the far greater evil, that it bears no basis in my analysis on whether genocide is right or wrong, as do you also admit. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, Palestinians are, barbarians.
I feel like people use that word intentionally to stifle any kind of nuanced conversation about this conflict. That's what I feel about that. It's like an I win card that you can play at any moment. Because if you engage and you're like, well, let's examine the word. What does genocide actually mean? Now, all of a sudden, they're going to pounce on you and try to make it seem like you don't give a about Palestinians dying, or you don't give a about any of that. Yeah.
You analyze and interpret this entire region of people. That is like, whether, I don't know if you recognize this or not, but that is like at the heart of right-wing sentiment or bigoted sentiment, which then opens up the floodgates to a lot of other justifications that befall the Palestinian population. Whether you're doing that inadvertently or not doesn't change that dynamic. Because
are we really trying to say that people are going to have the same values? They're going to care about a group of people across the world just as much as the people in their own town. Like, I think that's just so divorced from reality.
I do. I genuinely do believe that. And I personally have that opinion. So yes, I am telling you right now, 100%, and it's not because I'm from Turkey or...
The reason I think this is kind of bull is because they only extend it to this one conflict. So if Trump were to win in November, we all know he would exert influence immediately to stop aid to Ukraine, and which would inevitably lead to thousands and thousands and thousands of Ukrainians being slaughtered by a better armed, bigger, superior military. And yet they'll tell you that what's going on in Gaza is a red line for them. It's like, well, you cross that red line, I can't support that. Well, what do you think is going to happen in Ukraine? And of course, a big problem with a lot of lefties is that they don't, they it's not that they're like enthusiastically supporting Russia, although some of them are, but they view it in a context of like, of wanting like a multipolar world and thinking that maybe Russia isn't nearly as bad as people think. And, it's actually, well, they do have some legitimate grievances when it comes to the territories. So they find their way to kind of rationalize through it, and to the point where they just don't really care who wins or loses in that conflict.
Genetically brought up.
But the body count, if we stopped sending aid to Ukraine tomorrow, would be intense. It would be devastating. It would be thousands of Ukrainians dead.
The only difference is they were born under a colonial rule, an occupation that is very brutal and very humiliating, that dominates every aspect of their lives. Whereas you and I, myself included, were born in the United States of America.
Lil Connor, what's up, buddy?
Therefore, we have a tremendous amount more freedom in terms of in terms of what we believe, what kind of opportunities we want to pursue, and
we don't live in a religious theocracy, because that would be worse.
No, it's not. There is no intractable quality of people born under a religious theocracy. Like, no one, if you were to talk to regular Saudi citizens, or regular citizens from Qatar, or regular citizens from Dubai, there are plenty of people who don't like that form of governance, who want something to change, who want to change their governments so that they can live free lives in the same way that Americans, to a certain degree, in comparison to those other countries, can live freely and express themselves sexually, even though there is plenty of setbacks here in modern America as well, towards trans people, for example. And
Splash,
the only
what's up,
difference
buddy?
is where they were born. And I don't think that is a sentence of that automatically means that they're immoral people. I do not make my assumptions about an entire...
I don't assume that, all things being equal, these people that live in these countries are inherently homophobic. I believe they're a product of their culture, and I believe they're a product of their governments. And a lot of these governments are super authoritarian. I feel like a lot of lefties, when you bring this stuff up, they're like, oh, they're all barbarians? Is that what you think? They're all primitive. You think you're so much better than them, huh? It's like, no, I think their government's fucked up, and I think their government rules by really fucked up sort of ideology.
Natural resources, like I don't know how much more they would differ, but if a ton of Chinese people immigrated into the United States of America, for example, as they have, yes, they would become Americanized, as is the case with
Asmon, I
undocumented
think,
migrants, for
took
example.
it way too
There are
far.
studies
With what he
conducted
said.
on this as well. We can talk about that too if you want.
I think that's so that's a good point, but I also think that whenever you've had large contingencies of people from other cultures that come into, like, let's say the UK, they have tried to push for other laws. They have tried to change the laws there. They absolutely have.
What do you mean?
About like people pushing for new laws?
Like in terms of what? Like,
in terms of how people can express themselves, in terms of how people can act in public? Yes.
You need to elaborate a little bit. I'm a little confused about what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that there have been a lot of instances where people that have come from another country that come into a new country, make the new country like their old country. I think that's what would make sense.
Is there an example of this in modern history or in any time in American history at all?
Yeah. An example is that, so I live in Austin, Texas, and I can drive over to other parts of Austin, Texas that are a lot closer to Mexico than they are like America. They have Spanish names, and there's a bunch of people there because a lot of those people came from another culture. Absolutely.
Wait,
I think that's
Texas
the same everywhere.
Texas is probably the worst example for this because of
the war.
Well, no, because Texas,
the border and
the
everything?
border crossed them is what the common sentiment is in general.
Right.
But in terms of like Texas culture, I mean Texas. Here, I'll give you actual data on this. Right, studies are conducted on this stuff all the time. There's always a new group of migrants that are coming from a specific part of the world, whether it's because they're like economic refugees, economic migrants, or if they're like escaping war or some kind of like political struggle in their on the home front, right? And whenever there's always dare I say violent resistance to that, and the qualities of that violent resistance, like that immediate reaction, doesn't necessarily change until they become a part of the in-group. A great example I can give you is the Irish, for example, or the Italian migration that has occurred in the United States of America. Similar attitudes were demonstrated towards Italian people or Irish people. Oh, they're changing the culture.
Bro, like there are so many redneck, like Hispanic people here. The super Republican, yes. And they are the ones that are always...
They do this, but it's like, would you rather be a homosexual man living in Texas, or would you rather be a homosexual man living in Qatar? Be honest. Come on. What are we doing here?
Second generation, the data shows that by the second generation, regardless of where people are coming from, whether it's Guatemala, whether it's Mexico, whether it's a Latin American country or Norway, by the second generation
says, I can't
or China,
wait when Trump wins.
Americans assimilate almost completely. And by the third generation, they have completely assimilated.
We will see.
And there are examples of this around you that you can probably point to, people that are maybe 2 generations removed from being fresh off the boat, or 1 generation removed from being fresh off the boat, that are impossible to associate with anything but American culture. The people that
we had in my high school, we had a lot of Eric Hernandez's.
Yeah, so
I totally understand what you're saying.
Is anybody else watching that show, by the way?
I say, like, most people that come from other cultures that are deemed inferior or declared different ultimately do end up assimilating to the culture of
There's a show about Eric Hernandez on Hulu.
Immigrated to.
Oh, is it Aaron Hernandez? That's what he meant? I think that's what he meant.
Generation that changes rapidly.
Well, I mean, you're talking about, like, you know, the way that one person is, like, 2 generations later. Of course, I'm not going to be like my grandfather. I'm sure you're not either.
Yeah.
Of course, people change over time. But I'm saying that if you take people from a culture, those are going to be their values. That is their values. Now, will that change over time based off of where they're at? Absolutely, it will. Of course, it will. but
Okay.
it's not like a switch. It's not some like switch, like somebody just comes over somewhere and they're just completely different.
Yeah, but ultimately,
so-
second generation, it changes. So like their next of kin that is born on U.S.
Yeah.
soil with the same rights and same responsibilities, like ultimately exhibit the exact same outcomes regardless. Once they are.
I've heard him say this before, that people are usually assimilated by like the second generation, but I guess I have a few questions.
That like kind.
What does it mean to be assimilated? Where are you getting the data? You know, it seems kind of believable, right?
Is right, like that these people, they come in.
All right, Frozen Storm, take it easy,
and
buddy.
They are not monolithic. Okay, they are not monolithic in their understanding of the world at all. And while there might be some cultural differences, ultimately, nothing like inferior or superior to one another. I don't.
no, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think that there are different.
Chat, I'm getting more views on YouTube. Are we doing YouTube full time? Should we just say Twitch? What do you say, YouTube? I'll listen to you. I'll do it. Everyone has a price, okay? Everyone has a price. I can be bought.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
I think that some things should
I think
change.
that in terms of inferiority, I wouldn't necessarily say cultural inferiority.
Make an offer.
Conservatism. That's the way I view the world. Like from my perspective, I think that a lot of the things that people point to, a lot of the issues that people point to, actually is just simply conservatism being repackaged as like an intractable quality of a different culture.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you think that we'd be having this conversation if I said conservatism instead? Because like obviously
you're gonna have a tougher time doing reacts on YouTube. I have the worst chat on Twitch. So what happens if you do a react and it gets does your stream go down, or does it just stop showing ads, or what happens there?
They're being analyzed as like an intractable,
Ben
inalienable
Brody with 5 gifted suburbs.
Like,
pitches,
a
they
force
give me
almost that is
smoking
like
chat, but they won't come and voice.
completely monolithic.
Because they pussy.
Yes, if you were to say that the conservatism demonstrated by certain groups is inferior
only
to
YouTube streams, you risk your stream getting nuked.
Like broader.
Wait, so how does Destiny do it? Because he reacts all the time.
Material conditions as well.
I feel like you kind of have the same viewpoint on this that I do, though. Like it's just that like your vocabulary.
You get a warning on OBS.
I think that really okay.
No, of course not. Because for me, it's not like the cultural differences. I like to say
I think they give you a warning that you're violating copyright.
That's
not a strike, right? I don't think that's a strike, right?
The reason why I don't have an issue saying that, even though many people get very upset at me when I say things like that, is because conservatism or liberalism
is with the tier 1, thank you.
A way of understanding the world. Reactionary approaches to understanding the world is simply a way that you look at the regular stimuli that you experience on a daily basis, and your analysis can change. Your analysis can very easily change, and you can be an entirely different person.
I feel like broad strokes, I agree with Hasan that just because somebody is ruled by a government that is oppressive against particular groups, that's obviously not a justification to just bomb people. You know what I mean? I agree with that. I mean, I don't want to delve into the nuance of like Israel's current military operations in Gaza, because that's just a whole other can of worms, and we've had this discussion 1,000 times, and I just don't want to do it. I also think Hasan's perspective is a little bit dubious. This idea that you cannot criticize a group like Hamas because of what's happening or because of what Israel is doing. You're not allowed to be critical of Hamas. It seems insane to me.
There are groupings that are appropriate, like, for example, Nazis, people who believe in, Nazi ideology or fascist ideology. You can group them just as well as you can group like socialists or any other form of ideology.
I wonder if the reason that the YouTube views are up on the stream is because I'm regularly posting there. That's got to be it, right? Like since I've been regularly posting, and the views have been kind of ticking up a little bit on trend. I wonder if that is the reason why it serves more people the thumbnail on their homepage. That's got to be it, I assume. Because when I would go live on YouTube before, it would get like, I don't know, 200, 250 viewers or whatever. I'm not sure. It's 823 now. Why wasn't I streaming on YouTube the whole time? Jesus Christ.
What do you mean?
Mendezu, what's up, buddy?
Like for example, being against it's against the law to be gay. Like this is a worse viewpoint.
I think it's
okay.
I think that bigotry of that sort is, of course, abhorrent. I do not
Right.
agree with that at all. But I
So
also
Because
how
you're
would you
riding the
define
Hutch
that?
twins'
Would you say-
coattails. True,
I
true.
Would you
have.
say conservatism is inferior to
True.
liberalism?
I think conservatism is
YouTube chat. How many of you guys saw my stream on your homepage? I wonder.
understanding that like the conservatives here in the United States of America are conservative within the boundaries that are permissible
That's right, Fenton.
to
Yeah.
American society. They respond to American material conditions. If
Yeah.
the conservative mindset, which can change, okay,
Okay,
because
all
no
right.
one is
Some people saw it on the
born a
homepage.
reactionary, no one is
Algorithm's
born
doing
a
its thing.
conservative. But let's say someone was someone that is conservative
Okay,
here,
wow,
if
that's
they
a lot. All
automatically
right, there you go.
teleported and adjusted to the material conditions of like conservatism in Iran, they would be no different than the mullahs.
I'm gonna tell myself that I'd have just as many viewers if Destiny was live. It would be the same viewer count. None of you guys would be watching him instead of me.
Like, you know, these southern
choose
racist
to believe that.
churches, you group them up with
You
people
cannot
from the
dissuade me.
Taliban. I think that they'd have a lot in common.
yes.
I totally agree
even the
with you.
likes of
And
even
I
the likes
think-
of Ben Shapiro,
yes.
it's adjusted to American society.
Zero Yor, what's
it
up,
doesn't
buddy?
have to be a
Absolutely.
one-to-one comparison. It's adjusted to American
Yes.
society because ultimately, what do our conservatives do? Like an example I use regularly is you have the what's that church that always goes to like even
Westboro Baptist Church.
yeah Westboro Baptist
Oh,
Church.
hey,
Like,
I already
those
mentioned
guys are f***ing insane. Right?
They are.
But what do? Instead of going and rising up in arms and like murking gay people, they go and protest outside of like, I don't know, non-denominational churches, or they go protest like at a
Right.
gay funeral. And then what do? They go back home and eat $5 jalapeno poppers at Applebee's because that is the material reality of living in the United States of America. A lot of your needs are fulfilled. A lot of your needs are met. If the dynamic was that America resembled, I don't know, the Korengal Valley, or America resembled the material conditions of like a Gaza, you bet your ass that those guys would absolutely, or Iran is a better example in this circumstance, they would be doing the same. They would be doing not even the mullahs are doing. They'd be doing ISIS. They'd be throwing gay people off the roofs. You know what I mean? And
Thank God that we have American culture.
No,
to
but it's
keep
not. But
that
you see,
in check.
No, but that's not
No, it's
American
not just-
culture. You
it's not
see,
just
that
culture,
is
it's
American
institutions.
material
I think it is.
reality.
It's
It
It's
is
our
our material
institutions.
reality that we've created through our culture.
No, no, culture is
Okay,
not
you
what
disagree.
created this material reality. I absolutely disagree with that. Yes, it is American domination that we.
Wait, culture didn't impact like legislation throughout the years? Culture didn't impact like our amendments that we added to the Constitution? The culture doesn't impact politics? Is that what he's saying?
In the way that they do, it's more so just military dominance.
You think a culture has no impact on the success of a country?
No, I don't think so.
What?
I think
I
that
disagree.
I think that
I think it-
culture. I think
does.
that culture is created
Yeah.
after the material realities. Yeah, no, I don't think that there's like anything unique. See, that's what I mean. Do you think that there is some uniqueness to like someone being American? And if you think that there's a uniqueness to someone being American, then what happened before America even existed, right? Or if there's a uniqueness to someone being American, do you think that they like any person living somewhere else would directly be at odds if they were to come into the United States of America, and they would not be able to Americanize?
I think some people aren't. And I'm sure there's a spectrum for that. There's
American style democracy isn't necessarily unique anymore, but we were certainly unique at the time. Like, are you kidding me?
well, there you go. And so
El Delgado, thanks so much for
you
9
came over-
months.
You 12.
I came
right?
here when I was 18.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Way
Yeah.
later. Yeah. So yeah, you just fit right in. It's no big deal. Other
Well-
people, it's totally different. I think a big reason for that is language too.
Certainly,
Like you
that
speak
is
English.
that is a part of it. But my point is, I don't think that like American culture is like is superior. There's plenty of
I do.
issues that you have also.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? I'm ready to say it. YouTube is the better platform. It's superior. Which is the inferior platform. Pat yourselves on the back, YouTube. You're the new cool kids in town. Twitch chat can get
Culture at all. I don't think
and
that
you
there is
know
any reason to have
I
these
completely
kinds of
agree with you with
conversations.
that.
What?
I totally agree with you about that. And I think that the evidence that it's a superior and great culture is the fact that we can talk
It is
about
what it
those
is.
things openly without any fear of negative repercussions.
Oh, don't
I think
unsub.
I
Don't
do. And think
unsub.
about how many
Don't do
countries
that.
do not enjoy the privilege that we have right now.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
because
is why
it's
I think
because
that our
they're
culture is
they're
great.
constantly. If we're talking about like countries in the global south, that is directly a consequence of being under constant
worst
domination.
chatting
That's the
on
whole
Twitch.
point.
Oh, I mean, come on. We both know that there's
No,
plenty
that
of
is
countries that are
100%.
not under. Well, what about China? What about Russia? Right?
No,
I mean,
that's a great. Okay. You just brought up a great
ahead.
example. You
Yeah.
brought up a great example.
I kind of hate the term global south because it's like, what the does Argentina have to do with like
I can't believe you've done
Indonesia or India? You know what I mean? Like, why do they the idea of a global south? Like, it's this like homogenous kind of like region of the world when there's just wild amounts of diversity in countries that inhabit the global south.
Sort of real, without any sort of real threat. During the Cold War era, we had the McCarthy trials. Being a communist is still technically illegal in the books, but no one really applies it.
is that
the
true? I've never
Yeah.
heard that.
Yeah. The
I'll take your word
Espionage
for
Act
it.
was
That
the
sounds insane.
The Espionage Act was directly designed during World War II,
Did he just say it's illegal to be a communist in the United States? Is that what he said?
speaking out against the war efforts. Like, so
Sure.
even throughout American history during the Cold War, and even before that during World War II and even World War I, there were plenty of instances where naysayers were actually jailed. Something that seems insane.
He's
to
going back
contend with
80
now
years.
in
He's
current
going back
in
80
existence.
years. No,
Right?
90
Exactly.
years, 100 years.
And yet, historically speaking, revolutionary figures have not only been imprisoned, but also been assassinated by the American state, specifically black revolutionary figures in our history. And that was because...
Or attempted to assassinate, like with Martin Luther King.
Yeah. So, he
Yeah.
was assassinated.
Was
But-
that? Well, yeah, but like, was that? But like, what I'm saying is, like, it was not really determined that it was from the U.S.
Yeah.
But the U.S. had it a bit. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
The point
In 1973, a federal district court in Arizona decided that the act was constitutional and Arizona could not keep the party off the ballot in the 1972 general election. In 1961, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the act did not bar the party from participating in New York's unemployment insurance system.
China growing in power on the global stage, engaging in a lot of soft power initiatives, especially, is
Stacey,
causing
Compare, thanks so much
American
for 11 months.
society and American governance to become once again as restrictive as it once was during the Cold War. And I think that we will see a very different understanding of the First Amendment. And I can give you a current understanding of the direct violation of the First Amendment and free speech as we know it and understand it.
I can set up Tangia on YouTube. I just have to do it after the stream. I was just kind of running this as a test stream to see how it would go. Little did I know that YouTube is the superior platform, and I should have been doing this for years.
It was to apply
I had
social
no idea.
pressure
I had no
by
idea.
taking advantage of this wonderful First
so sorry.
Amendment that we have here to directly demand that the American government and American corporations boycott the state of South Africa. Now, Israel was a big ally to South Africa at the time.
I never would have expected Hutch to go full on destiny pilled liberal. Please get a backbone. Bro, I have always been a progressive liberal. Maybe I flirted with some like anti-capitalist leftist sentiment when I was in my 20s. A little bit, not much.
Like their Western collaborators and whatnot.
Maybe a little bit.
And inevitably, the apartheid ended.
Praxis, thanks so much, buddy.
Israel learned that lesson and decided to lobby the American government and lobby American Congress and write direct laws that are in contravention with the First Amendment. In 32
Asmongold brought up earlier, he's like, yeah, we have some bad stuff in our past, but like we've come a long way in the last 20 years. If you go back 40 years, we've come a long way. He was like talking about how America has progressed. And this is what happens a lot when you argue with leftists about America is they'll go back to like World War I policies and be like, look how bad America is. Oh, you think China's bad? Look at this law from 1943 in Alabama, huh? Not so different now, are they?
Being stupid.
So that paired up with the new...
I mean, like, no, here's the thing, right? That's terrible. You're totally right.
yeah.
That's all, like, I mean, because, yeah, this is bad. I don't know how this happens.
I mean, that happened over many, many years of people being like, well, the Palestinians kind of deserve it because Israel's our great ally and it's the only moral democracy in the region. And it's the only democracy in the region.
I'll be streaming on election day. I'll be streaming all day on election day
to propagandize Israel's position
out of my mind.
Actually was not, which was directly at odds of.
We'll moderate.
And most people are completely and utterly unfamiliar. And any kind of person that was criticizing it, like a person like myself, was immediately branded an anti-Semite for calling into question this foreign nation and their direct lobbying efforts to undermine American First Amendment laws.
You got labeled as the anti-Semite of the day, didn't you?
Of the week from solveantisemitism.org. Yes.
Yeah. So like, and I do want to make sure that like it's very much established that like in the same way that criticizing any sort of like Zionism or Israel or whatever is not anti-Semitism. It absolutely is not. I don't think criticizing the outcomes of certain cultures is any form of racism. I don't think so either.
No, but
it isn't necessarily racism.
But I'm not talking about like Jewish culture. Do you see what I'm saying? When I talk about Israel, I'm talking about the direct actions of the Israeli state as it stands.
Right.
It's direct actions that are the maintenance of an apartheid state. I'm talking about settler colonialism. I'm not talking about like an intractable quality of like Jewish people that makes them immoral or inferior to anybody else. I don't believe that.
I think that of course. I think it really like you can't, if you look at people through like I guess like, I don't know like really what the word is for it, like basically just like a statistic. I think that looking at people through statistics is fundamentally dehumanizing. I think that you're right. Of course it is. It's by definition dehumanizing. But I think that you can look at the actions of the people that are in charge of those countries
him hosting the Houthi
and
guy?
say that those actions are not actions that you support.
Yeah.
In the same way
agree,
that you do.
But I also rate on a curve.
Good.
I also rate on a curve in terms of like what is immediately in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I understand.
We're getting close to 1,000 viewers on YouTube.
Like
it's true. We're getting close.
Idea.
All the cool kids are here.
View,
but it's not a tier list. It's just like there is. Well, in terms of not being a tier list, there are certain things that are there are certain things that go beyond, and I think everyone kind of intrinsically understands this. Like there are certain things that go beyond the tier list, right? Like there is no like I don't like I consider the Holocaust and the genocide that the Nazi government engaged in to be morally repugnant, like one of the worst things that has ever happened historically. And I consider chattel slavery in that same vein, and the maintenance of it. Not good. Yeah. And so
I don't know why I'm laughing.
Think it's or care about like the way that
not good. Not
German
good.
Jews operated or their understanding of like homosexuality at the time. That bears no basis. Just like I don't care about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising like being violent. I think that it was the moral and righteous thing to do. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was the correct thing to do at the time. And that's because
I looked into the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and to my knowledge, they didn't indiscriminately murder civilians.
And I consider it to be unproductive.
Like it was a violent uprising, but I don't think that they did anything like what we saw on October 7th.
The standard of the dominating force, like ultimately it doesn't matter.
Am I wrong about that? I'm pretty sure
what German Jews would have done if they had the same military power that Germany did. Would they have dominated like the Volkish German society in the same way that like
the
Nazi
Warsaw
Germany
uprising,
dominated the Jews? No, I don't think so. And I don't. There is no evidence that they would do such a thing. And that's my perspective on the matter.
Well, I think
the same thing, and that's how I feel about the Palestinians.
I understand that. Well, I mean, I feel like a lot of Palestinians, I mean, I've seen videos of Palestinians celebrating 9/11, right? I mean, I mean,
Palestinians.
I mean, I'm not sure really whether this is entirely true with all of them, and also like,
but like I don't even. Do you fault them for celebrating like? There were Palestinians that were celebrating like Iran attacking Israel, for example.
God.
Iran
Of
did a
course.
retaliation strike against Israel.
Are we going? Is he about to
and they
do
said that they were gonna
America
hit
deserve 9/11
2 air
again? Is he
bases,
about to
and
hit
they were
us with
gonna
the
hit the Mossad
repeat?
headquarters directly inside of Tel Aviv.
Do I fault somebody, not Palestinians, let's just say anybody, for celebrating the deaths of a lot of people that are innocent? Yes, I think it's bad.
Do you think
It is
that?
bad.
Do you think that if Jews in concentration camps were celebrating the bombing of Dresden, would you fault them in a similar vein?
I would say that it was bad. Yeah, it would.
Jews
Obviously,
in concentration camps, if they were to see like bombs falling over Dresden and they were like, "Wow, this is sick! Like we're gonna get liberated," I think like things are changing. I would not fault them. I think that they have every
Was
right
Dresden
to do
a
so.
military
So I
target
think that a lot
in
of
2020
things
in
you can
World War II?
understand why somebody is doing something.
And but for the record,
And
I also think like
Or was it just
Dresden
like, fuck 'em
was,
up?
It
like
was
the bombing of
disgusting.
Dresden, for example, was considered to not be appropriate in terms of like all.
The Allies saw Dresden operation as the justified bombing of a strategic target, which United States Air Force reports declassified decades later noted as a major rail transport and communication center housing 110 factories, 50,000 workers supporting the German war effort.
Excited about the bombing of Dresden. Like I would not say that.
It was a much different kind of warfare in World War II. We're talking about total war.
Killing innocent people isn't a good thing. And of course it can be understandable and things can have an explanation, but the explanation isn't necessarily a justification, if that makes sense. So like I see your point of view and about how like there's a certain degree of this where it's like understandable. And I agree with you that it is understandable. But I think that understandable bad behavior in a lot of cases is still in fact bad behavior. And I don't really think that like it's impossible to know what somebody else would do in a circumstance that they're not part of. But what I do know is that when I see a group of people that are celebrating a bunch of innocent people getting killed.
Homie, this is why you don't have 1,000 views and you don't know about Dresden. LOL, are you a political streamer? I know about Dresden.
And I can easily put myself in their shoes. And
in 2 nights of bombing in Dresden, I think it was somewhere between like 60 and 80,000 German civilians were killed.
Guys, let's not celebrate the Iranian retaliation against this country that is like literally eviscerated my family. Like,
you know what
you'd be
I'd
like,
be
no,
doing?
this is sick.
I would be cheering it on. I would say yes. Fuck
Okay,
yes.
I'm glad that you agree.
But
Okay.
I wouldn't be sitting on a soapbox saying that I'm the good guy. I would be like,
No,
yeah,
I still think
you get
they're
what
not.
you deserve. That's
They're
what I
not
would
the
say.
good guys in this situation. They're the victims.
Oh, he's doing a
and
Joker
that's the
reference
point.
here.
Like,
Okay.
I'm not going to
Seth
fault
Hill,
the
what's up, buddy?
victims of genocide for experiencing a little bit of joy in that moment. And
I
then,
get that, but sometimes victims can create more victims.
Well, historically, so that's a good example. That's a good point that you made. This is something that every single like world
25,000. So 25,000. I was a little bit off there. The Allied firebombing of the East German city of Dresden in 1945 killed no more than 25,000 people, according to NBC News.
the whites in the South. That
some estimates are up to
newly
250,000.
newly
Jesus.
freed slaves were going to come and like dominate them and enslave them. That of course didn't happen, but they very quickly sought to restore the racial pecking order, and they were able to do so. And the violence actually in even in the aftermath of like liberation of a people that were dominated, the violence.
If he's talking about South Africa, the difference is that the ANC is just not the same as Hamas. There was no equivalent of Hamas at that time, with the sort of like, there might have been radical groups that were in favor of just like black liberation, completely pushing white people off the land, but they were not the mainstream group that was against apartheid at that time. It was ANC or ANZ? ANZ, I think it was the ANZ. They were like a bunch of leftists. They were a bunch of communists.
Racism.
What?
Oh, I know. We've been very creative with racism.
Yeah. So
the 3/5 compromise.
But you have to remember.
Law.
But you have to remember
Oh, yeah.
once again, it was never. But black people
First
did
name,
not
last
actually
name. What's up, buddy?
end up dominating white people. Is my point, and not because they weren't given the opportunity. There was no interest or need. The idea that
there were a few isolated incidents of the ANC doing violence against civilians, And for like a brief amount of time, Nelson Mandela flirted with the idea of like maybe that will be necessary in this struggle, but they didn't commit to that long term. Their targets when they did any kind of violence were like military government targets.
It's usually not how it goes. That's never how it goes.
Right? So if Palestine had the ability to, do you think Israel would exist?
No.
That's a great question.
No.
Yeah.
One that one that people ask me all the time. If Palestine, if historic Palestine existed, right, in the same way as like a nuclear militant force, Israel as an apartheid regime would not exist.
It's a country. It wouldn't exist.
Israel would have never been able to
There wouldn't be any Israeli Jews there. They wouldn't be there.
Palestinian villages and wipe out Palestinians, and that there is no like the dynamic would be so different.
Right. Yes. They would kick the Jews out of that land altogether.
The notion that Palestinians would wipe out Israel is silly. Like it's not.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
There would be no need for the Palestinians to wipe out Israeli citizens.
What are you talking about? And why did it happen in like multiple neighboring Arab states?
Removed from their homes, their ancestral homelands, and being destroyed. If, for example,
it happened in several neighboring Arab countries. They just kicked them out.
Colonial.
There's like one Jewish guy.
Started after the Balfour
Which country is it that has one Jewish guy? Is it Iraq?
If this was not done as a dominating force, a British Empire at the time, was not purposely and willingly.
Is it Iran? There's one country
Jewish
that has one
into
guy.
The region and giving them like areas, that they had declared that was basically created in the same way that like America was created, giving them areas of land specifically. And instead, if Jewish people were like voluntarily migrating into the region, then it would resemble American society. It would be a diverse society of Jews and Muslims and Christians living side by side.
No.
But that is a complete alternative history in this situation, so I don't even know how that would work.
No.
I don't know whether that would happen.
I could point to like Ottoman rule in the region.
She's doing the Brianna Joy Gray. She said the same thing, and then she got laughed at on stage.
Cohabitating the space without much struggle or fight at all, as a matter of fact.
Oh my goodness!
I think that you're right about that. I do. If I think about it myself, and I feel like back then, definitely a better cultural viewpoint on that. I think so. I don't know what would happen if Israel wasn't able to defend itself. Would they continue to exist?
No.
Right? It's very hard to say.
It's not hard to say.
We're making predictions.
In terms of the resistance, right? In terms
what do you mean?
Everyone always says like, "Oh, Palestinians are inherently anti-Semitic." Joe Biden himself said. Biden himself said. Palestinians demonstrate an ancient form of anti-Semitism.
No, he was talking about Hamas.
And that's why they are, resisting
against
Hamas. This is not the case.
Right.
Many of these Palestinian resistance leaders throughout history, including ones that are religious fundamentalists, including ones that are secular, including ones that are very including ones that are Christian, including ones that are Marxist, socialist. They've always said that this has nothing to do with Judaism or Jews in general. If Israel was a Christian state, or if Israel was a Muslim state.
Well, why is it in both Hezbollah and Hamas's charter that they want to like declare war on not just the Jews that live in the region, but Jews of the world?
Palestinian resistance throughout time.
You're right about that.
And Palestinian resistance throughout time.
But if you call that anti-Semitic, I guess that's bad.
And has become more violent as Israel has become more violent towards Palestinians, because the standard is always set by the occupying power. And it goes in the opposite direction as well. If Palestinians were allowed to coexist amongst Israelis in a singular nation state, then there would be no conflict. There would be no Hamas, because these groups would be.
There are Palestinians that live in Israel proper. Isn't it 2 million? Don't 2 million Palestinians live in Israel proper?
There's the Jewish Power Party, which is the Klan, but for Judaism. It's built around. Is that
like over in Israel?
Yeah. Well, it's originally it's an American Jewish guy whose name is Meir Kahan. There's an entire.
In Israel proper, Palestinians constitute almost 21% of the population. As part of its Arab citizens, many are Palestinian refugees or internally displaced Palestinians, including over 1.4 million in Gaza Strip. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. No. 250,000 Not 2 million. There's about 250,000 that live in Israel. I don't know if they have equal rights. I don't know if they can travel as freely. I don't know, but they can vote. And as far as the Knesset goes, they have representation in the Knesset. It's a small number, but they're in there. Yeah.
We're usually only terrorizing Muslims and Palestinians and Christian Palestinians, Muslim Palestinians alike. We're oftentimes
it's 2 million
let go with a slap on
it's
the
over
wrist,
2 million if you include
including, but
West
not
Bank and
limited
Gaza,
to
but we wouldn't include that, right?
Who is
That's not what I'm talking
the
about.
current, I guess, like in charge of the national police. I forget what his like actual responsibility is. He very famously, in Israel, back in the day,
1,002 viewers on the YouTube stream. Jesus Christ.
Assassination and said,
slow down, guys.
his car, or we have like
You're making Twitch look bad.
his car. We can get to his car tomorrow. We will get to him. And then he was assassinated, right, by a rabid
It is 2
right-wing
million in
psychopath.
Israel
Why was
proper?
he assassinated? Because
Hold
he
on.
was kickstarting the negotiations process amongst Palestinians and Israelis.
So how do you see this being resolved? It's
suck
like
your dicks.
I don't really see
eat
it
your
being
pussies.
resolved unless one
I'll
group
do it. I will do it. Today there are this was back in 2012. There were 1.6 million Palestinian citizens of Israel, about 20% of the Israeli population. So you guys are saying it's now close to 2 million now.